Okay. Okay, Ezra Hashem. Today's daf is
Kamma,
Kamma daf pay, and
hi,
we're going to begin from Ayin Tes Umid Beis by the Mishnah. Okay, Zug da Heilige Mishnah. The Mishnah says, "Ein megadlin behema daka be'eretz Yisrael." You're not allowed to raise a skinny animal in Eretz Yisrael, like a sheep or a goat. Very interesting. A person in Eretz Yisrael is not allowed to have a sheep or a goat. Not under all circumstances, but we'll see. There's limitations. But stamazai, let's say you want to keep the sheep for its wool, you're not allowed to have it in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because they're difficult to watch. They're difficult to contain. And therefore, they're liable to do damage in somebody else's property by eating up the produce in somebody else's property. Most other people who own property in Eretz Yisrael are Jewish people. So inadvertently, you're having an animal in your house that could potentially do damage to your neighbor, your Jewish neighbor. So they made a rule that none of the Jewish people are allowed to raise a behema daka, a narrow animal, Eretz Yisrael. Okay, obviously this doesn't apply today. Things have changed, but in the time of the Mishnah, nobody in Eretz Yisrael, you were not allowed to raise a sheep. So you would think that there would be no dalet v'hei, like I said, because nobody has sheep in Eretz Yisrael, and in Chutz La'aretz there's no knas. So where do you have a case of dalet v'hei? But there are limitations that sometimes you could raise a sheep or a goat in your house. We'll see in a second. Aval Magadlin, you're allowed to raise a sheep or a goat in Syria, which is a Jewish country that was annexed by David HaMelech, but it doesn't have a din of Eretz Yisrael in all respects. Or Uva Midbaris, if you happen to live in a desert in Eretz Yisrael, then you're allowed to raise a behema daka, the goat.
okay.
Now the Mishnah says, Ein megadlin tarnagoylim b'Yushalayim. In Yerushalayim, if you lived in Jerusalem, you're not allowed to own or raise chickens. Why? B'pnei hakadoshim, because of kachim. Most of the people in Jerusalem were eating kachim, because kachim kalim, and therefore, if chickens who tend to roam around in the garbage will be able to pick up a sheretz and somehow come to the kachim and be mitama kachim. There's a lot of kachim around Jerusalem. So they made a rule that nobody in Jerusalem is allowed to raise chickens. So that applies by a Levi Yisrael, whether you're a Levi Yisrael in Jerusalem. But even if you're a Kohen in Eretz Yisrael, let's say you're a Kohen and you're living in Bnei Brak or Tel Aviv or whatever, you're not allowed to have chickens. Like Kahanim Eretz Yisrael, and the Kahanim are not allowed to have in Eretz Yisrael a Kohen who was not allowed to raise chickens, but they taharas, because he has a lot of truma around in his house. And again, the Tarnagoyel, when it touches shrotzim, it's going to touch the truma and be metame it. Ein megadlin chazirim b'chol mokum. No Jew is allowed to raise pigs in any place. Seems like even in Chutz La'aretz, you're not allowed to be in the pig business. Lo yegadel, we'll see why is that so. Obviously, you're allowed to be in the horse business, so why can't I be in the pig business? Lo yegadel odam as a kelev elam kain hoya kosher b'shal shalis. A person is not allowed to raise a dog unless it was tied with a chain, because a dog could cause a lot of fright to people, and therefore you're not allowed to have something that causes a lot of fright. It may cause a woman who comes to visit you to miscarry. Ein person nishayvim layonim, you're not allowed to set a trap for a dove, a bird, unless you're making this trap so far away from where the Jewish settlement is of 30 ris. In other words, because if you set a trap for a dove, perhaps you're capturing a dove belonging to another Jew. And therefore, it has to be that you're setting this trap somewhere so far away from where Jewish people live that you're not going to be trapping Jewish doves. It'll be something from Hefker. So you won't be over the Isra of Gezela. Zug the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Ein megadlim behema daka b'Eretz Yisrael. You're not allowed to raise a behema daka in Eretz Yisrael. Ava megadlim, you're allowed to raise it b'choyroshin in the forest, Shebarit Yisrael, because in forests really is an open area. Most Jews don't have settlements there, so you're allowed to raise. If you happen to have a cabin in the forest, you're allowed to raise a sheep or goat there, because if it's probably going to stick in the forest, it's not going to go damage somebody else's property. But Syria, if you live in Syria, feel the Yishuv, you're allowed to have raise a sheep and goat, even if you live amongst Jews, because most of the area around you is non-Jews. So therefore, they didn't make that gezerah. Of course, in Brooklyn, you're allowed to raise a behema daka. That wasn't the Chazal didn't put that prohibition outside Eretz Yisrael. Tanya idach, in another brayso we learned, ein megadol behema daka Eretz Yisrael. We don't raise behema daka in Eretz Yisrael. Ava megadlim, you're allowed to raise one b'midbar shib Yehuda. If you live in the midbar Yehuda, if you live there, you're allowed to raise. Uva midbar shib Sfar Akka. If you live in the desert of Sfar Akka, if you live remotely, then you could raise behema dakas. Even though we said, we don't raise behema dakas like a goat or a sheep, you're allowed to raise behema gasa, a big animal, like an ox. Why? Because an ox was very much needed to carry loads, a donkey to carry loads, and to plow a field. So therefore, they couldn't make that gezerah prohibit no animal like that in Eretz Yisrael. We don't enact an edict against the community, unless you're sure that most of the community could stand by this edict. And therefore, this was to make a gezerah that you can't raise a behema gasa is too much for people, and therefore the Bezdin didn't make that gezerah. Behema daka efshel lahavi mechutz laaretz. A sheep or a goat could be imported from chutz laaretz, so people could keep that rule. Behema gasa efshel lahavi mechutz laaretz. It's very difficult to bring a big animal to Eretz Yisrael, so therefore they made they didn't make the gezerah, and you're allowed to raise behema gasa in your house. Even though they said you can't raise a behema daka, for shchita, you're allowed to have a sheep or goat in your house. Just the maximum amount of time you could keep that sheep or goat is for 30 days. So before Yom Tov, you're allowed to have a sheep or goat in your house for 30 days. If you're making a chasana for your son, you're allowed to have it in your house for 30 days. But make sure that you get rid of it before Yom Tov. You can't say, "Oh, I just bought it right before Yom Tov, so I could keep it another 30 days." The salkadaita kamina, I would have thought the nafak le regel, if Yom Tov passed and you didn't shecht it yet, but from the time that you bought it, 30 days did not pass. I would say, don't say, "Oh, tlasen up until 30 days, I'm allowed to keep it around my house for 30 days." No, because the whole purpose of why you bought it is because you thought you're going to need it for meat on Yom Tov. And for keeping meat, that's not raising animals. You're allowed to keep an animal like that temporarily around your house. But here, since Yom Tov passed, since Yom Tov passed, we don't want you to keep that sheep or goat around in your house. V'hatabach, we go to Pei Amid Aleph. V'hatabach, if you're a butcher, lokeach v'shoichek, you can buy the animals, you can buy sheep and goats and shech them. Lokeach, you can buy it v'shoya and keep it around in the butcher shop. The most delayed one there the most delayed of your purchase should not be longer than 30 days. 30 days is the maximum you can keep this animal, even if you're keeping it for shchita. Shalu Talmidim Rabbi Gamliel. The students ask Rabbi Gamliel, Mahu legadol, can I raise a sheep or goat in my house in Eretz Yisrael? Amar lehem mutar. So he said, I think it's permitted. Says the Gemara. So the boys asked him, Vatnana ein megadlin. We said in the Mishnah that you can't raise a sheep or goat in your house. So Gemara challenges Elahachi kaboy. This is what the real question they asked Rabbi Gamliel. Mahu lashois, can I keep a sheep or goat around in my house even for more than 30 days? I just want to have a pet sheep. Amalahem mutar. He said it's mutar. Uvach loitetze v'sira be'eda. You got to make sure that it doesn't shepherd in the grass meadows, out there in the outdoors. I guess you have to feed it. You buy food to feed it in your house, but don't let it graze around because, of course, the problem is it might graze in somebody else's property and cause damage. So rather, ela koishroi, you're allowed to tie it, b'karei amita, you have to keep it tied to the post of your bed. And as Rashi explains, Rabbanan disagree. They said, no matter what, there's no exceptions. You're not allowed to have a sheep or goat in your house. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, there was this great chassid, his name is Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. And listen to this story. He had very heartaches. He couldn't catch his breath, and it was causing him a lot of pain. And they asked the doctors, what's the remedy for that? And he said, there's no remedy. He could only manage this disease. Every morning, he has to take and suck on hot milk, hot goat milk from every morning. So he had no choice. They brought him a goat. And they tied it to the post of his bed. And he nursed on this goat milk every morning. After a while, his friends came to visit him and see how he's doing, how sick he is. Since they saw the goat, they walked into his house and they saw a goat tied to his post of his bed, they turned around. They thought, oh boy, he's not such a chassid. And they said, he's holding robbers in his house, because the goats, having a goat in your house is like having a robber in your house, because it could potentially go outside and eat the produce in somebody else's field. We're going to walk and visit him. Yashu Ubatku, they started to investigate. Who is this chassid? Was he really a chassid? But they only found that this was the only avera that he did, and that goat. And therefore, again, this was refuah, the refuah of goat milk. So he needed to do it. When this Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, this chassid, was passing away from this world, Amar, he made a cheshbon and nefesh, and he said, I know she'ein bi oven ela oven oisa'ez. I know I never did an avera in my life except the avera with this goat, that I had to have a goat tied to my bed, even though the chachamim disagree, and they say you're not allowed to do that. I transgress the prohibition of my colleagues who made the gzera of not to raise or have in your house a goat or a sheep. So Amar Rabbi Shmuel said, Mi bali batim sheba galil ha'elyon. Bali batim, you see, when you say in shidduchim, I need a balabata shidduch, everybody knows you mean you want some wealthy, or chashav shidduch. So you see that expression in the Gemara. My father, my family comes from the most chashava, rich family in the north. Says Rabbi Shmuel about his family. But my whole family was destroyed. Why? One, they used to do two things wrong. So they used to raise sheep and have them raise sheep in their forests. And we know in Eretz Yisrael, you're not supposed to raise sheep. And they were big Talmid Chachamim, and they knew how to judge civil cases. And even though they did it as an individual judge, they didn't be part of a group, taking three people judging civil cases. So even though they had forests next to their houses, so what was the problem with them of shepherding sheep in these places? Since in order to bring their sheep to graze, they had to pass a small field belonging to somebody else. So really their heter of raising sheep was a little bit weak. And because of that, they were lenient on themselves to raise sheep, but a lot of other Rabbanim frowned upon that practice. And therefore, Rabbi Shmuel said that was the reason why my family, with all its wealth and prestige, was destroyed. The rabbis taught, if you have a shepherd that wants to do tshuva, and he was raising sheep, so now he has to sell all the sheep because he got to get rid of it if he wants to live in Israel. We don't ask him to make a fire sale and sell everything at one time, because then everybody will, the people, the goyim that want to buy it off him, will, offer him a cheap price, knowing that he's forced to sell. He can sell one at a time as the opportunity arises. You have a ger. Let's say a ger, his goyish father died, and now he has an inheritance of dogs and pigs. We Jews don't have dogs and pigs, or wild dogs. We don't require him to sell it right away. He could sell it one at a time, because he can wait for his right price. Look at this story. A guy wants to motivate himself to get a job and to get married. So he made a neder, mishanada, likach bias, to purchase a house, because again, before you get married, you should buy a place to live. Likach isha b'Eretz Yisrael, and to take a woman in Eretz Yisrael. So he made this neder, and this is a lifelong neder. He wants to achieve this goal. So we don't require him to take right away the first house that he comes across, or the first woman that proposes. He can wait around in a normal, normally till the amount of time that he finds the appropriate house and the appropriate wife. Says the Gemara story. There was this woman who was an almana. She lost her husband. She had a son that was giving her a lot of pain, and she needed to find a husband to help her raise this kid. She made a shvua. Anybody who proposes to me, I'm saying yes to the shidduch. And people who were not appropriate for her, jumped at the opportunity to propose to her in marriage. And she had no choice, right? Because she said, whoever is going to first to propose to me, I'm going to marry that person. When the Chachamim heard about it, they said, her intention was to find the appropriate wife, appropriate husband. How long it takes, I don't know. But she doesn't have to take the first one that comes through the door. Now says the Gemara, they said, just like you're not allowed to raise a behemah, like a sheep or a goat, you're also not allowed to raise like a chaya, a wild animal, a small wild animal. What's a small wild animal? Let's say you want to have a pet fox, right? Or a pet goat, a pet deer, so that you can't raise that. Because Rabbi Shmuel, because these animals, they can't be domesticated, and they easily could cause damage. Says Rabbi Shmuel says, Megadlin kalavin kufrim, you're allowed to raise small dogs, the chasulim, cats, the kufin and monkeys, the chudas noim. We're going to call this a genet. Okay, so the genet looks like this. You see on the screen, a genet is like a funny type of animal that was used primarily to kill rats in your house. So the Gemara asks, when you have these like small cats or the genets, they help keep your house clean from rats, mice. My chudas hasunoim. What is chudas hasunoim? Amar Yehuda shartza charza. It's called in Aramaic. It's called the shartza charza. V'ikadam charza the charza. It's called charza. The katina shakya v'raya bein vardine. It has very small legs, as you see in the picture. Small legs, right? It has small legs, and also it hangs around the bushes. My shartza, what does it mean? Shartza means its legs are cut off. Basically, it has small legs, and so you're allowed to raise that and keep that around your house, because if you need it, so that there wouldn't be mice in your house, then you're allowed to have it. Amar Yehuda Amarav. In Bavel, they made the same rule as in Eretz Yisrael, that you're not allowed to raise sheep or goat, because Bavel was like Borough Park, so there's always Jews around. So you're not allowed to have a sheep or a goat. Amalei Rav Ada Bar Hava said to Rav Huna, this is a shocking Gemara. Rav Ada Bar Hava said to Rav Huna was raising a sheep and a goat in his house. Didach Mai. What's your excuse for raising a sheep in your house? You live in Bavel. Amalei, so Rav Huna answered, my wife, whose name is Chayva, is watching it that it doesn't do damage. Amalei, so Rav Adabar Ahava said, Chayva tikbirinu livna. Your wife should bury her children. It's unbelievable. He gave her like a curse because, I don't know, he gave her a curse. And therefore, Rav Huna Rav Adabar Ahava, as long as Rav Adabar Ahava was alive, Rav Huna could never have a child with Chayva, because as soon as they had a child, the child died. Rav Huna said in the name of Rav, in Bava, we made the same rules as in Eretz Yisrael when it concerns Behema Daka, that you're not allowed to raise Behema Daka, but not Bava from yesteryear. This rule only started Michi Asa Rav LeBavel, when Rav moved from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. A lot of Jews came with him, and the population of Jews increased. So therefore, Bavel was almost similar to Eretz Yisrael, where you needed to make the rule that nobody was allowed to raise a sheep or goat. Says the Gemara a story. Rav Shmuel, Rav Shmuel, and Ravasi. Those three people, Rav Shmuel and Ravasi, Iklil Bey Shavua Haben. Either they came to a bris milah, which happens after 7 days of a boy, or they came to a pidyon ben, or as Tosis explains, they came to Beis Yeshua ben, means a Shalom Zachar. This is one of the sources of Shalom Zachar. Anyway, they came to this party. So they had to enter the room. Rav did not want to enter the room in front of Shmuel. Even though Shmuel was on a lower level than Rav wanted Shmuel to go into the room first. Now we go to Omer Beis, but Shmuel did not want to go into before Ravasi, who was greater than him. And Ravasi did not want to go in if Rav didn't enter the room, because that was his Rebbe. So now it's a stuck. How do you get all these three people in the room? Amrei Mar Nisrach, who should stay back? Nisrach Shmuel should stay back. V'neser Rav Ravasi. Rav and Ravasi should go in first, and then Shmuel should go in. Says the Gemara, V'nisrach Rav Oy Ravasi. Let Rav or Ravasi go in. So the Gemara answers, Rav really milse hu da'avad le Shmuel. Rav, in other words, if you have Rav coming in there, then Ravasi could go in. You could have Ravasi go in, then you could have Shmuel go in, and then you could have Rav go in. But the truth is, Rav really belongs to go in first. The only reason why he wanted Shmuel to go in first, because at one time, Rav gave a curse to Shmuel, so to speak. Shmuel tried to heal him. Rav had a lot of stomach issues, and Shmuel tried to heal him, and Rav was in such pain that he gave a curse to Shmuel. And he felt very bad that he gave a curse to Shmuel, so he wanted to show him respect. And therefore, Rav wanted Shmuel to enter the room first. Rav Milsibamu Shmuel, he just wanted to show a little bit respect for Shmuel, because of the story, the Latya Adabre Rav Ale, because Rav put a curse on Shmuel. Anyway, Adahachi Vahachi, in the meantime, also Shunore, while they're debating who should go into the room first, a cat came, and bit off the hand of the child. Wow. So the baby, who's right to have his bris, got his hand bitten off. Nafik Rav Adar. So Rav made a speech. He said, Choso, whoever has a cat, if you know your friend has a cat, muta laharga, you could kill that cat. Vasa l'kaima, you're not allowed to keep a cat. Vein ba mishim gezel, if you take it from your friend, there's no gezel, there's no gazela there. It's not stealing. Vein ba mishum hashiv aveda l'ba'alim. It's not considered as if you're returning something lost to if you find a lost cat, you don't have to return it to its owner. I guess Rav didn't live in Brooklyn. So the Gemara explains, what's wrong with a cat? Since you said you're allowed to kill the cat, so then what are you telling me furthermore? You're not allowed to keep a cat. If you're allowed to kill your friend's cat, certainly he's not allowed to raise the cat. The same it's only permitted to kill him. There's no isser to raise a cat. If you mind your own business and you let your friend raise a cat. Kamash Malan, no, you have to try to kill that cat. It's like a mitzvah. If you see a friend raising a cat, you should try to kill the cat. Amre, so the Gemara wants to understand. The kivin the Amre ein by mishum gazel. There's no stealing. If you take the cat away from your friend, that's not stealing. Manu tu ein by mishum hashav balam. So certainly, if you find a lost cat, you certainly don't have to return it to its owner. Ravina explained, lo oiroi. That means even if you find your friend's dead cat, so you would think that what's wrong? Let me return the dead cat to my friend so he at least can benefit from the hide of that cat. So that was the chiddush, that once the guy was over the avera of raising a cat, we don't, even if the cat disappeared, he had a lost cat and got killed, you don't return the dead cat to its owner. Meisaveh, okay, so we just got through saying you're not allowed to own a cat. So Meisaveh, so the Gemara asks, Rav Shimon ben Elazar, Rav Shimon ben Elazar says, Megadlin, Klovin, Kufrim, v'chasulim, you're allowed to raise small dogs and a cat, v'kufin and monkeys, v'chudis noim, b'pnei shasuyin, l'nakasabayis, because cats help keep the house clean from rats and mice. So therefore, why do we say that you're not allowed to raise a cat? So we said that Rav said, "Oh, whoever raises a cat is doing something terrible." Answer the Gemara. Okay, well here's we're going to stop. Like kasha, it's not difficult. If you have a black cat, that's permitted. But if you have a white cat, that's a dangerous cat. You're not allowed to raise that. Says the Gemara of Amaisa the Rav ukama. But the story with Rav, where the cat bit the hand off that baby, it happened to be a black cat, and Rav was saying, "Oh no, you're not allowed to have a cat in your house." Answers the Gemara, Hasam Yukoma Bar Chivori. It was a black cat, the son of a white cat. So its father was a white cat. Its mother was a white cat. So therefore, even though it looked black, but it has genetics of a white cat, of the dangerous cat. Says the Gemara, the Ravina asked this question. The boy Ravina asked, Ikoma Bar Chivora, if you have a black cat whose mother was a white cat, Mahu, can you keep such a cat? So Ravina wasn't sure. So why did Rav say this black cat, whose mother was a white cat, is usher? Answers the Gemara, and this will end. Kikaba by Ravina. When would Ravina have a problem with wasn't sure about a black cat? Be Kamma, you have a black cat, Bachibora, whose parents were white, but the grandparents were Barikama, were black cats. So it's maybe, according to genetic rule, this black cat, the grandkid, is more like a black cat, which is more of a tame cat, and not like the white cat, which is a dangerous cat. But Maisa the Rav story was, Bi'ikama bar chivora hava. It was a black cat, but its parents were white, and its grandparents were white. So therefore, most of the genetics in this black cat were from the white cat, and therefore it's a dangerous cat. And therefore, Rav said, you're not allowed to raise such a cat. It's one funny thing about a cat. People think it's a pleasant, tame animal, but I guess in the time of the Rav, certain cats were so dangerous that they needed to be warned and stopped from raising. Okay.